It is time. It's time to stop hiding. It's time to stand up. It's time for Christians to come together, to share their testimony, to inspire hope, inspire others, and to join their brothers and sisters as we answer the call. It is time to wake up the lions. And I have an absolute lioness with me here today, folks. I am so incredibly honored that she decided to come on this program and share her story, her faith with us all. Please welcome to the show, host of Soul Podcasting. She's got other podcasts that she does. She has other movements she's involved with. She's just an incredible young lady. Please welcome Demetria Zinga to the show. Demetria, how are you? And it's great to see you again.
Thank you so much, Rory. It's so good to be back talking to you again, and I'm doing great.
I love it. Love it. We don't waste a lot of time on this show. We kind of dive right into it. So, you know what the show's about, and you know what we talk about here. Tell everybody a little bit about who Demetria is, what your story is. You know, maybe how God has been influencing your life.
Yeah. So, again, I'm Demetria. I love talking about my testimony just because there's so much to how God has moved in my life, so many layers. And so sometimes I don't even know where to begin. But what I do a lot of different things, but I enjoy coaching with podcasting. I also enjoy mentoring women. I enjoy mentoring homeschool moms, which is where I used to be in that phase of my life years ago. So I kind of reached back into that community. And I love singing and songwriting, so music is a big part of my life. And yeah, brand building and doing the work for the Lord, whatever He calls me to do. There's a long story behind that, but some of that has to do with finding my voice, and which is why I'm passionate about podcasting, because for the longest time, I didn't know that I could share my heart in my own way. And I always kind of felt stifled. But going back into who I am and what got me here, I'll have to say that my parents are a huge part of my testimony and my story. And I just feel really blessed to have been brought up the way I was. They actually, both of them, gave their lives to the Lord about, I would say, maybe 2 or 3 years after I was born. So I had the benefit of being raised in a Christian home, which is not something everybody can say. And so I'm really grateful for that. So there was just a lot of learning about the faith and being in church. I'm a pastor's kid, preacher's kid. So I was in church 2 to 3 times a week from kindergarten all the way through. So I understand church life and everything about Christianity, churchianity, all of that. But throughout my years, yes, my parents were, they did the best that they could. They did a great job. They raised me well, but I had to still make my own decisions. And part of that was figuring out how much I needed the Lord for myself, not using my parents' faith and their ideas and their faith system as my own, but really getting out there and learning about the Lord for myself. And that really started with a breakdown in my health in college. And so that's kind of where my story began for my actual transition into really getting to know the Lord. So I knew about church, I knew about all of that, but knowing God for myself was it was a whole thing. And I had to reach out to the Lord, and actually ended up my first actually it was my second year of college. I had to drop out for a little bit and resign, or not resign, but just like drop out of school for like a semester so I can get my health back together. And I didn't know what was wrong. And speaking of spiritual attack, there were a lot of those coming at me. At the time, I didn't have a vocabulary for it. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew that I suddenly was not able to breathe as well. I couldn't walk all the way across campus to my different classes, so that was keeping me from going to class. I was getting dizzy. I was nearly passing out. My appetite changed. I couldn't eat food, and I became extremely depressed to the point where I did not want to leave my bedroom. So I had to leave, come home, and figure out what was going on. We had MRIs done, we had EKG, we had all the stuff that the medical doctors, everybody, was working hard to figure it out, and nobody could figure it out. We just knew that I was anemic, but all the other explanations to what was happening with me were not physical. And so we just assumed that, it's something I would get through, but I started to feel like this is spiritual and there's something very, very wrong. And it was at that point where I'm still out of school and figuring out how I was going to live the rest of my life. In fact, my mind said, you know what? It'll be just fine just to sit here in mom and dad's house in my bedroom in the corner of the house and never go anywhere for the rest of my life. I'll never get married. I'll never have kids. I'll never. And I had all this laundry list of things I would never do because I was never leaving that bedroom and I was fine with it. And that was going to be my life. And so, those were the lies I was believing.
Right.
And I went to a couple of church services with my parents, and they dragged me because I was not going to church anymore. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. But they dragged me to a service that was more of a healing type service, and it was a special one, and I needed it that night. And I think my father knew, and he was like, you're going tonight. And so he got me there, and just entering the space where they were worshiping and praising, and it was just like exuberant type worship, and I couldn't stand it at first. I was like closing my ears, don't want to hear it, don't want anything to do with this. And it bothered me, and I couldn't stand the noise.
Wow.
And then after a while, I actually got called out for prayer. Like, the person who was preaching stopped and pointed at me and said, I want to pray for you. And that's when it all changed. So they prayed for me, and they prayed over. Actually, they found what they told me was, you have this cloud of depression over you, and we're going to get rid of that. And so there was a prayer, and a lot of things ensued after that, and so many details to that story. But long story short, I felt like I had gotten free that night. And it wasn't like the end of the story. I had some work to do, but I was hungry for God after that. I just remember I was 19, and I just remember, like, okay, I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to study the word. I'm going to join a college Bible study group. I'm going to get back in there and do this, right? And so that's where it all changed for me. And I like hung on tight to God, just for favor and to help me, because everything was, Lord, help me breathe. Help me to walk to class. Help me to eat my food, swallow and digest my food. Like, every little thing, I was grateful for it after that experience. So it changed my life. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, what a story. And obviously, I'm so glad that you're doing better today because you seem incredibly
Yes.
vibrant every time I talk to you. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I've had some more health struggles over the years and still dealing with some things today, but like, my trust is in God to get me through it. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be afraid of this. Like, I've been through this before. I've been through it a few times already, and God has always brought me through, so he'll do it again.
yeah. Now, you said
Yeah.
something a little earlier I wanted to touch on. Most of us, when we go through that type of spiritual warfare and we're just getting pounded, and
Yeah.
somehow we've let this in and it's lying to us and it's tricking us and everything else. We don't
Yeah.
necessarily know it when we're in it. We know it, later when we look back and we see it and we recognize it. But you actually knew what was happening or had an inkling of what was happening while it was happening.
Yeah. I knew it because it was abnormal. I knew because there were things happening in my life that it just didn't feel like normal. I don't even have a right word to explain this, but it just felt like it was more spiritual than anything because I couldn't put my finger on it. There was no explanation for it, just the fear, just this overwhelming sense of fear that I never felt before.
Yeah.
Just being afraid to even go to sleep at night with my lights off, just everything was like a battle. And I knew that that had to be the enemy of my soul.
Right. When you were going through that and you were hearing that inner dialogue saying, just forget your dreams, stay home, don't
Yeah.
do anything. Did you know then that that's where that dialogue was coming from, or was that part of how it was getting through and kind of sandbagging you?
Yeah, so see, there were moments that I would listen to those voices and just thought they were my own thoughts. And
Right.
I reasoned with it and then agreed with it. And that's the thing, making an alliance, an agreement with a lie is the best way that the enemy can get into our lives and just wreak havoc if we agree. But then recognizing that this is a lie, recognizing that this is not coming from my head and it's not coming from the Holy Spirit. So where's it coming from? And when we don't recognize it and we start agreeing with it, that's where we fall into the trap.
Yeah, that's great right there. I love what you just said. 100%. I know people are listening to this right now going, and they're just nodding their heads.
Yeah.
Um, Now, I realized that your turning point was that moment at church when they
Yeah.
prayed over you and they recognized that cloud. But it doesn't just happen overnight, does it? It's
Nope.
still a process.
The process.
What was it like having
Absolutely.
to kind of go through that and heal,
Yeah.
in the days or weeks or however long it took
Yeah.
afterwards?
Yeah, there were still many nights after I actually moved back to campus. There were times that I still felt that sense of fear that was still there. Like it hadn't completely left. And so I had done enough studying my Bible. I was in the book of Matthew. I remember memorizing scriptures right before I moved back to campus because I knew I was going to need it in my arsenal, that I couldn't depend on mom and dad and their
Yeah.
preaching and their love and all of that was great, but I needed my own thing. So I had memorized scripture. I was listening to, at the time, tapes, so Bible tapes, and we were listening, just listening to preaching and sermons that was really feeding my spirit and making my spirit strong. So I knew when I got back to college, I was going to use that because I knew I was going to feel those feelings of fear and all of that. So yeah, it was a journey and a process. And what I had to do is find people. One of the first things I did, because my roommates were not the best, so I had to find people that I could like live the Christian life with. I didn't know anybody. And then so God led me to those people and to those groups, and I found some friends that we could talk God together and Holy Spirit and just the same, speaking the same language. And I think that was my survival tactic for the rest of college. And I did get better with time and with continuing to pursue the Lord and continuing to just be hungry for Him and more of His Word. And I think it was all about looking at my life in a sense of desperation. That meant completely, because I was very prideful before this. So this is like letting go of all, like there's nothing to be prideful about anymore. I was completely feeling like, okay, I'm at ground zero at this point. So I'm relying on the Lord and I've confessed Him as my Lord and Savior. And I depend on Him for everything, even to breathe. I depend on Him for those small things that we take advantage of. And I think that's where the Lord wanted me to be, that He knew how to get me to that point so that I would never again have to like be worried about, if am I going to like get this big head one day and just like I think I'm no, I absolutely am nothing without Him. So yeah.
Wow, very humbling. Yeah, 100%. I love that you mentioned that about the people that are around you. I think we all are familiar with the idea that we're called to, take up our swords and embrace the armor of God. The armor of God has so many different meanings, and there's so much that goes into it. Obviously, we
Yeah.
aren't putting on a suit of armor, but we
Hmm.
are protecting ourselves through God.
Yeah.
And the people around you, I tend to think are part of that armor because
Yes.
you draw strength, you give strength to them, and there's just that power and that sharing and that collective belief.
Yeah.
Did your parents advise you to do that, or did you come up with that on your own and say, I need better armor around me?
Well, all my life, my parents were always big on you don't hang around this person, that person. So they were very specific about who not to hang around with, and I knew that was their
Yeah.
heart. Their heart was just pick the right people, right? But in college, it was just me knowing that if I didn't find my people, that I might not survive well because I'm a social person and I need people. I'm not, and I don't need to be isolated and or an island to myself. So that was my kind of my thing. Like I need to find these people. And I asked the Lord to direct me to them. And there were a few different campus groups. And again, I'm an independent, so it was difficult for me to like go all in. And I went to the Bible studies, but I didn't do all the things, but I just wanted to be a part of those groups so that I could have those people in my life.
Right. Love that. You've been called to do some very powerful things that we haven't even gotten into yet, but we're going to here so very, very soon. The um, the spiritual warfare never totally stops, does it?
Nope, it does not.
And how are you still encountering that with the work that you're doing today?
Yeah. Wow. So interruptions, life interruptions. So it happens. Sometimes it's cyclical. Sometimes the things that I thought were put to rest come back and resurface, and I have to deal with it again. So whether it's health, whether it's finances, whether it's relationships, whatever it is, it always comes back. And sometimes when it comes back more powerful than the last time. And the thing is, though, is I've been through it before, so I'm like, okay, Lord, that I know what my weapons are, I know how to get through this, but this time it's on a higher level. And so I really have to come at this with even more of your word and more of your Holy Spirit, like more. And so yeah, they never change, but the thing is that God also never changes, and he's always the same yesterday, today, and forever. So the same strength I relied on then, I have to rely on today. But it keeps me humble because it helps me to see that no matter, like, okay, so we get from, maybe we're on step two and we get to step two, three, and four, and then oops, we run into a hurdle, and this hurdle is way, way worse than the one at step one. So now we go back to the altar, and it's like, Lord, help me to step four, right? And then every couple of steps, there's another level. You know, they say every new level, there's a new devil kind of thing. So I've
Right.
heard that. So at step four, Lord, help me to get to step six, to step eight. And then, but it's step by step, right? And that's the walk of faith, is that no matter what we go through, we know he's with us, and we're going to go to the next level and to the next step, but we will encounter that warfare, and it's just being prepared. And also the other thing is just not being completely dismayed. Yeah, we're going to be disappointed, we're going to hurt, it's painful, it's exhausting, but we have to remember that we will come out on the other side, and because we belong to him, he's not going to let us just, be destroyed. I mean, he's God. So if he loves us and we're his children and we belong to him, then he is going to take care of us, whatever that looks like. Even if we can't see the outcome, we have to know that we know that we know that the outcome is going to be okay.
I love that. Know that we know that we that's
Yeah.
perfect. That's
Yeah.
so perfect. Tell everybody a little bit about what it is you're doing today, because you're doing some very powerful things out there trying to help people.
Yeah, so it's about the voice. It's about using the message that God gives us to deliver that to the masses. And I think there's so much out there, so much, you know, to listen to and to think about. But it really matters how God's people show up. And it matters that we show up with integrity and with something important to say, because people are listening and they've heard it all. But now to hear something that's spirit led, to hear something that is infused with peace and hope and joy, it's life changing. And so I feel like we are vessels and conduits for that work. And so my work that I believe the Lord wants me to do is to empower others, whether it's just emotional or just, to get their ideas on the table and be like committed to starting this thing of whether it's podcasting or showing up in their space in their own way. That's part of what I do. And initially, I started with blogging and just helping moms to blog. So I was a mom blogger, homeschool mom blogger, and I started with that. And then we kind of eased into, all right, so now that you're blogging, maybe you want to start a podcast. And, there's different ways to show your voice. You can start an email newsletter. There's different things you can do to deliver your message, but it's all about sharing what God put on your heart, because everybody has a story. So that's part of what I do at Soul Podcasting. But I also do helping Christian women, so Christian Women Podcasters Network. And that is something I'm still working on. And hopefully we'll start to do more of that this year. And helping homeschool moms and women in business and entrepreneurs. And then hopefully be able to use my voice more for my music producing, which is something that I've been working on for years, but love songwriting, and I sing at my church. So those are the kind of the things I do.
Wow. I mean, you're a little bit busy, and I love
A
that.
little
So
bit.
you're doing multiple podcasts that have similar themes. You're trying to help Christian women in all of them. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much. Yeah, for the most part. And I think Her Business Elevated has a bit more of a, open, open feeling, I guess. But for the most part, I've been targeting Christian women.
Targeting, right?
Targeting.
It-
Such a harsh word, but yeah,
especially when we're talking about spiritual warfare.
I know.
But I love it though.
It's
No,
a good
you
target.
are. Yeah, you are. You're aiming to help those folks.
Yes.
What I know a lot of it has to do with what you've been through, yourself personally. But do you feel as though you were called to do this in particular with Christian women? That somehow you're supposed to go help them with their lives?
I ask myself that all the time because I don't understand why just Christian women, why not just Christians in general, or why not, like why this particular group? And all I know is that the first time I started a website just for my own enjoyment, it was a website for Christian women. And this was like, 20 years ago. And I knew that I had a heart to share the gospel. And, at that time, I hadn't completely like evolved my ideas, but I knew that it had something to do with the gospel and something to do with Christian women and something to do with encouraging them and motivating them to get moving with their voice and their message. So I wanted to provide that platform for them. And so that's why we had our groups and we had our virtual teleseminars and the things we did to talk about our everyday life, our health and our families, our marriages, all the things. And so I feel like there has to be something there. And I know that God has chosen that for me and put me in that space. And I don't understand it, don't understand why, even to this day, but that's where I am. So I guess that's where I'll have to be.
I
And it's
love it.
good.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I mean, hey, when you're called, you have to answer. That's the end of the
Yeah.
story. So,
Exactly.
and I love that too, because when things just sort of come to us, when we say, oh, it just came to me, I mean, nothing just comes to us.
That's
It's
true.
sent from somewhere to somewhere. And
Yeah.
so that's really big for you to recognize that moving forward. Now, as you do these things, you also have a boutique podcast agency where you help other people
Yeah.
get their podcast going. And is that Christian based also?
That is not necessarily Christian based.
Okay.
However, there might be a little faith that kind of shines through once in a while, but no, it's definitely to just assist podcasters with the work that they're doing, especially with the technical aspect of just getting it launched and getting their audios and videos edited and just kind of the practical stuff. But then also coaching, just helping them through interviews, and then any questions they have with podcasting in general.
Right. So
Yeah,
you're still helping people to share their voice.
exactly.
And it's up to
Yeah,
them how they share it and what they talk
right.
about with that voice.
That's true. That is
Right.
very true.
That sounds like step one of building discipleship, frankly. Okay. So,
Yeah, actually, that's a good thought. That's true.
yeah. One of the things that we do talk about in the show is our call to build discipleship, of course. And it looks as though you have the call to do that in a lot of different ways, and you're doing it in a lot of different ways. Now, do you think of it that way when you're talking to these folks about homeschooling, that you're actually helping to build discipleship, or is that just an unintended end result of, you being a strong Christian woman?
You know what? I think and I don't mean to say this in a negative way, but like I kind of feel like God tricked me into it because like I thought I was starting this homeschool blog for other reasons, and then here I am preaching the gospel to, and it's just like, okay, Lord, I'm preaching again. Like, what's happening? So, yeah, I do think that He has developed me into where He wants me to go, and every time I think I'm veering away, He brings me right back to discipling. And the thing is also I'm very career driven, and I gave up the idea of having a career that's why I keep talking about like 20 years is a long time, right? So I mention it so often because I gave up 20 years of my probably the prime. I want to say the prime of my life, but I don't want to put a cap on God. Maybe that's not the prime, but
Sure.
it's the part of my life where I really could have devoted to a company and worked, and had a retirement by now, and just like I think God, when He told me to raise my kids, He really meant it, and He meant for me to disciple them. And that groundwork in the family at home is what kept me on my knees for 2 decades. And so all the other work is just kind of, it's fun for me, really. But my main work for the past 2 decades was on my knees for my kids.
Yeah.
And that was hard. And it's still hard. It's warfare. You're crying out to God for your children, for their protection, for their future, and just mentoring them and coaching them and helping them through their life's decisions until they're able to be launched. But I know that one day I will see all the benefits of that. But there are many times that I thought, well, Lord, why didn't you let me get that job and that job and that job? And He's like, because I had a plan for you, and it's different. And just trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it starts at home, of course, right? Discipleship has to start at home.
Yeah.
So you're putting out a fantastic example to other people that way too. You can't go out into the world and build discipleship with people you don't know and then neglect the people that you brought into the world.
That is so
So,
true. Yeah.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
doing a wonderful thing by doing that.
Well, thank you. I knew God wasn't opening up other doors because this was the only door that He wanted me to step through and to follow through with. So when all the other doors are closed, it's like, okay, what other option do I have? I have to be obedient, right? And so that was what He called me to do. And I know everybody is different and has a different calling, and God is using them in those callings. But for me, He told me to be home with them and to give up some of the things that I wanted at that time. But in that process, I was able to start the homeschool blog and help those mamas who were also choosing to be home. And so it kind of all came together, right? And I'm grateful for it. And I knew that He was calling me to do it. So that was where my discipleship, I guess, began, is mentoring them. And He showed me clues along the way that, I was to mentor women, younger women, as I got older, the younger they would become, and I would mentor them and help them. And yeah, that's something that I thank Him for every day, but sometimes I just don't feel equipped to handle it all. I'm just like, I don't know, Lord, is you really choosing me to do this? Because I'm the soft spoken kind of like, I don't know. But He's like, yeah, you're going to do it, and you're going to do it in my power. I'm going to empower you to do it.
Nice. Do you feel like you're still coming under fire through different types of spiritual warfare with, I mean, you're talking about homeschooling and you're
Hmm.
talking about being a stay-at-home mom, and those are things that have come under fire just on their own in the
Oh,
last
yeah.
several years, of course.
Hmm.
You're doing all of that and you're putting
Yeah.
yourself out there with your faith on
Yeah.
your sleeve, for everyone to see. So
Yep.
is it still continuing? And if so, how?
Yeah. The answer is yes, yes, and yes. Lots of that. And just the ways they vary. And it depends on like the communities, right? So again, homeschool community has its own flavor. And there I come under fire for different reasons. And so I've been questioned about my faith. I've been questioned, like, is this even possible that you are doing this work? Because how do you even belong in this space? And it's just the way I look, just the way I look doesn't belong in this space. So that is the driving force that I've had for the past 15 years. And even just protecting my kids from that in homeschool groups has been a struggle. And so I've
Wow,
always had to
really?
fight. Yes, it's very much a big problem. And I've addressed it on my podcast in one of the episodes. And the Lord told me address it in love because it needs to be addressed, and it's a problem. And I've had other women who look like me and came to me and said, I'm suffering. Can you help? Like, can you start something for us? And I'm like, no, God didn't call me to do that. But what we can do is we can talk about these things and put it out there and let it be known that in the Christian community, you guys, we have to do better, and that this is hurting so many people to divide by race, divide by background, ethnicity, divide by social experiences and socioeconomic, backgrounds. So much division within that space. And yeah, I've been under fire publicly. I've been humiliated publicly. And yeah, just kind of the poster child of that, just having my picture posted and having things said, and then just really a lot of nastiness. So that's one
Wow.
aspect. And then I've had other things, in different arenas, and that I've had to kind of just take my space and say, you know what, I'm not going to shut up because God told me that I can speak. I have a voice and I'm going to use it, and I have a platform, and I don't have to, acquiesce to everybody's desires of what I say or don't say. I'm always going to say it in love, but I'm going to say it.
I mean, I don't know why that hit me like it was hard to believe because I do understand the world we're in. So,
Yeah.
of course, I can
Yeah.
believe it. But that brings up another point. I'd love to hear your input on this. This is maybe half step off the beaten path, but it's something that's really been coming through as I've been doing interviews and as I've been talking to people about these topics. One of the things that seems to be coming through, especially in the spiritual warfare space, is that we assume that the spiritual warfare we're going to get hit with is coming from people who are very anti religion of any kind. They're
Hmm.
anti God. They're atheists. They're the what is it, the green hair playing video games, eating Cheetos in your mom's basement
Right.
type of thing, right? And what I've been hearing more and more and more is that the spiritual warfare that we are encountering as Christians who are trying to have individual, strong relationships with God, that it's coming from our own ranks.
Yep.
And you
Yeah.
you are you're experiencing that.
Yeah.
I
And that's what's so difficult, because that's what makes it more of spiritual warfare. It's even more, it's magnified because it's your brother and sister in the Lord, and you're like, no, how can you feel this way? How? Right? And so that's what makes it even more painful and more of a struggle. And that's where you just have to pray and let God take care of those situations and remove yourself, if you need to protect your space. But always speak up. I always feel like it's good to say the things that are the truth in love, and make it known that yes, there is a problem here. And because the Lord talks about bringing correction to the church in the New Testament, Paul talks about bringing correction. And so that those things need to be on display, and they need to be talked about and not swept under the rug. But that's a lot of where the spiritual warfare is taking place. There's jealousies and bickering and all of these things because we can't just be happy for the gifts and the talents God gave to each individual, and be good with that, right? And be happy with God gave us, and celebrate what God gave others. And that's also spiritual warfare.
Absolutely, it is. 100% it is. Well, I appreciate you saying the things you've said and bringing these things up because when you say spiritual warfare, I think people have this sort of image of like a Hollywood devil, standing in your way and, playing a fiddle in Georgia or something, type of thing. And they don't really understand that it comes to us so subtly,
Yeah,
and in so many ways that like look normal but aren't through society. And so, let me
right.
ask you this, just in terms of just an opinion question, and you
Hmm.
you know you have the right on my show to just say I'll pass on that question, right?
All right.
You don't have to answer everything. All right, you don't have to put
Okay.
stuff out there if you don't want to. When it comes to the church and what they're doing to just promote Christianity as a whole, do you think they're doing, I don't want to say, well, enough or the right things to bring us all together?
The church as a whole, as
However
in
you want
all
however you want
the,
to answer the question.
yeah, let me think.
Yeah.
To bring us together. No. But I don't know that there's a I'm not sure that there's a clear-cut solution, because there's so many varying ideas, opinions, beliefs, and there's already so many factions and so much dissension and so much separation and so many different denominations. We are the one faith in the world that has so many hundreds of denominations.
Yeah.
And so we're split in so many ways. And I know that has to be the work of the enemy to split us up like that. And we fight over the smallest of things, the tertiary and secondary things, but instead of believing in the one primary thing and then coming together in unity about those things. And so I think it's almost, to me, I think it's almost not possible to come together without a huge work of the Lord. Like it has to be huge because the way things are split up right now, like nobody's getting on the same page. So it would have to be a movement. It would have to be something that just brought everybody together and we just said, forget about all this. We need each other. And I don't know what that answer is and what that would be, but definitely I think churches individually in their own ways are trying to bring unity and gather for the most part those who are on the right track or it's trying to do the right thing. But on the whole, I can see where the difficulty lies. And so my prayer is that God would bring and usher in a movement of some type that we can start breaking down those barriers.
Thank you for your honesty and for taking on that question out of left field.
Yeah.
If I hadn't already interviewed you once on another show, I don't think I would have gone there with you. But you've been very
No, it's
open
all
and
good.
very, very giving with all of this. So, and I really do appreciate you and your opinions. We definitely need someone to unite the faith at some point,
Yes,
and it's
absolutely.
I can't stop thinking about it. So, if you see
Yeah.
me out there holding a sign, throw a nickel my way, will you? And we'll keep it going.
There you go.
All
We'll do
right.
it.
But no, we need to do that for sure. I learned so much from talking to folks like you, who are really out there in the battle and doing what you're doing. So, all right, let me ask you this. As people are hearing what we're talking about and they're getting motivated and they're saying, hey, I know I need to do more. I need to go out. I need to build discipleship and spread the word. Unfortunately, when people hear build discipleship, I think they envision like standing in front of 5,000 people,
Yeah.
on a mountaintop, right? And it's like,
Right.
you don't have to do that, but you can do it one at a time, lead by
Mhm.
example, that sort of thing. Start with your family like you have.
Mhm.
Um, for folks, though, who really do want to, and they really aren't sure how to get into it, how to start, do you have any thoughts or any advice on how these people can start, building discipleship, spreading the word, becoming active in this movement that we're all a part of in some way?
Yeah. Yeah. I think pray that the Lord will bring a person or two into your life that really needs your support. Someone that is maybe in a position where they're hurting and they just need some encouragement. And ask God to bring that to you, and He will. Like He's faithful because there's people all over the place that need help, and so you'll see this person or people coming into your space more frequently, and that's your opportunity to create and start forming a relationship with them. And that's where discipleship starts with its relationship. And I don't think we need to have everything housed under the umbrella of it has to be in this church building per se, but we are the church. Everywhere we go, we are delivering the message of Jesus. So that is part of discipleship is bringing people into the Lord's ways, but they won't know the ways of the Lord unless they get to know someone who is His disciple. So if we're being discipled by the Lord and we disciple them, then that's how we're bringing people into the kingdom. And I think it just starts like you said, one on one, right? Maybe one on two, maybe a couple. Then before long, you have a small Bible study group, or even just a coffee group. It doesn't even have to start with the idea of it's got to be this Bible study and this structure. No, maybe it's just having coffee, and then they ask questions and you talk about your faith and make it very conversational and then invite them to church, right? And so it starts very small and practical, but then also some people God is calling them to just launch them straight into ministry. And if that's what God is calling you to do, then that's how you disciple. You just get in there and you do the work. And it might be in front of 5,000 people, So it's whatever God has, like whatever He's given you to do it with integrity, be faithful with it, and the Lord will bless it. And if that is all you do is you work small groups and you work one-on-ones all your life, then you are discipling all your life in that capacity.
Demetria, that was amazing. I absolutely love that advice, and I could not have asked for a better answer to that question, to be honest with you. That was fantastic. So, as we kind of wrap things up here, I want to thank you, of course, for everything that you've brought today, sharing your testimony. This is very personal stuff, and for giving the encouragement that you have to everybody out there who feels like you and I do. Before we kind of wrap things up, if anybody wants to reach you, reach out, talk to you about one of your groups, homeschooling, any of that
Yeah.
stuff, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so there's so many different places, and the one spot you can reach me for all the things, you can find Soul Podcasting, Christian Homeschool Moms, Her Business Elevated, but you can just go to demetriazinga.com, and that houses all of my information, and that's a great way to reach me too. And I'm also on Instagram, so I'm under I have a couple of different accounts there, but you can find me at Demetria Zinga.
Nice, nice. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
And again, as we kind of wrap things up, then, and I appreciate that, folks, reach out to this lady if you want to hear what she has to say more than just this short time. We are blessed to have her on our show. Do you have any parting thoughts just for everybody who's out there, who's listening, who may be encountering spiritual warfare, for instance, and just kind
Yeah.
of feels like, why bother? The world's against me. Everything's sitting on
Yeah.
my shoulders. Anything that you can talk to them about to maybe get them to just start looking up, have a little bit of
Yeah.
hope.
Yep. Yep. Rest in the Lord. Just rest because He fights our battles for us. And yes, we are armed, in the armor of the Lord, but He's the one doing the fighting, and He will make sure that we come out of it, and we're going to go through. He says that we go through our storms and we come out on the other side. And so as we're fighting, as we're, walking, as we're running this race, all of the things that we're doing, it's work. But in the midst of it, rest in the Lord, because you have to be assured in the God that you trust, that the sacred text that we read every single day and call our Bibles, the things that we build our lives on, that has to mean something. So we need to believe in it and believe in the God who created us in the universe and know that He's going to take good care of us. So rest in the Lord.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Demetria Zinga, podcast host, um, founder of the Soul Podcasting Collective, and wonderful Christian lady. Thank you so much for coming on here today, for helping us spread the word, and just for being you. Absolutely blessed to have had you on today. Appreciate you.
Rory, thank you so much for this opportunity. It was a blessing. So thank you.
Thank you. Folks, it's time. It's time to wake up the lions. Uh, More than that, it's time for you to take your rightful place amongst the lions with your brothers and your sisters, and let them hear you roar. The world is ready. You are ready. And at some point, you just have to believe it.